another culture, another rhythm of life, something in us expands quietly, permanently, and in ways no educational degree can measure. And it's especially meaningful to share this with you this afternoon because simply by being here, because you chose to travel and you chose a ship like this one that is wonderfully aligned with a foundation, actually two foundations that care very deeply about the ocean. And you've already taken the first step by being here. The title of my talk is You Don't Have to Be a Scientist to Fall in Love with the Ocean or Make a Difference, so I'm going to hope to explain my path a little bit. I work with a small foundation on a tiny Caribbean island, which, don't worry, you'll hear where. But today, the local work connects to a global mission. We all share with Mission Blue and MSC Foundation, which I'm proudly to be part of, protecting the oceans and some of the most extraordinary places. In the 1980s, I have to admit, I was what you would call a yuppie. Pretty much self-absorbed. I was a financial analyst working in mergers and acquisitions for a Fortune 150 company in New York City. I dated stockbrokers, lawyers, had a ski house in Vermont, played tennis and a little bit of golf at a Greenwich Country Club. You probably heard plenty about people like that. And then for New Year's Eve, one night, I went on a blind date. And the guy I met, his parents owned a dive shop in Princeton, New Jersey. Well, I always wanted to learn to dive. So I learned to dive, and he set up a dive trip on a boat called Tropic Bird. And this is what live-aboard dive boats looked like in the 80s. Now you can go on very luxurious boats. So my 20 best friends and I, we had a ball. We went diving in the British Virgin Islands and had a blast. But part of that really changed my life because the dive instructor on board was this guy named John. And little did I know how my life was going to take a turn. I gave up my corporate job. I gave away a lot of things, sold some things, gave away 84 pairs of shoes, really. And I went to Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt with him. I couldn't spell it, didn't know where it was. And there I was, transplanted American amongst all Europeans, people from the Middle East, only spoke one language. But it was pretty amazing, certainly a change. I dove the Red Sea at a time when it was absolute at its apex. I learned to be a better cook because I was the hostess, which means you do a lot of dishes and a lot of making beds on Egypt's first live-aboard dive boat, which set me up to be able to be the hostess for a week on the Lady Jenny 5. I couldn't find a picture of that, but that was built as Hitler's victory yacht. Never got used, it got turned into a British dive boat. And that earned me $10 a day. Next, we hung out, I said, with Europeans and lots of divers, but also with locals, so Bedouins. One was named Suleiman, and Suleiman took us to Saudi Arabia to dive one weekend because you could just go north and do that. We got chased by gunboats. So after a few weeks, months, I thought, hey John, maybe we should go somewhere a little bit more normal if we're going to carry on diving. And we talked about owning our own dive shop. So off we went to British Columbia. Absolutely stunning, beautiful place off of Vancouver Island. Especially beautiful when it's sunny. And we thought, we're gonna have our own dive shop. He bought the first boat he found. Bad idea. And taught me how to dive in a dry suit, learn about tide tables, learn about diving in crazy currents, and try not to drown in a dry suit. But it was kind of amazing. It was amazing diving. Things like giant blue-nosed anemones, hooded nudibranchs. But yeah, really, really cold. And the boat died. So when we got a call to go back to the Caribbean, didn't take much to convince me to go in another direction. Along the way, we did lots and lots of diving. John taught me to slow down, look closer, focus on the little things, and he said, you'll never get bored diving, or in nature in general. Pay attention to behaviors. And yeah, there's quite a world out there. We were in the Caribbean in 1989 when Hurricane Hugo hit. And at that time, people told us, oh, that's the worst hurricane we've had in 50 years. Which I thought, okay, great, check that box. Don't ever have to go through that again. Therefore, we thought it was safe to carry on diving and pursue our dream of owning a dive shop. So we went to another place. At this point, my parents are getting a little like, what's going on with this dive bum you're hanging out with? Because now we've moved multiple hemispheres in 3 years. And we went to this place called Saba, at the time known as the last frontier of diving in the Caribbean. Went diving every day, worked for a dive shop. John got to take lots of pictures. I got to go to trade shows. He submitted his first photographs to a magazine, and when we got the magazine, because back then they mailed it to you, we're looking for the article when I noticed, hey John, that's your, I'm on the cover. You got the cover shot the first time. So yeah, life was pretty good. So when the owners of that dive shop decided they wanted to educate their daughter in the States, we said, well, why don't we buy the dive shop from them? Seemed like a good idea. John said, we'll do it on one condition, and that we still travel. And so we did. So when he said, we're gonna go to Australia, I'm like, okay, great. I assume we're going to the Great Barrier Reef. But no, he said, if you're not willing to dive cold, you're going to miss at least half of the ocean, actually a lot more. So we went to Kangaroo Island, which is, if you, it's in the Southern Ocean, next stop, Antarctica. So not only is it cold, it's also really rough. And we weren't going to like a normal dive resort. No, we went to meet this guy who could find a certain animal. But it's okay, he organized dry suits for us. But when I got there, my dry suit didn't fit. And on board, once we were an hour offshore is when we realized that, so yeah, I got into a very compressed, old, thin wetsuit. But my choice was to be violently ill on the boat or jump in the ocean. So this is beautiful Kangaroo Island topside. And indeed, they have kangaroos. We even stayed at this farm stay where the woman rehabilitated kangaroos, so there was a pet kangaroo. So yeah, wonderful stuff. But more importantly, the diving was pretty amazing. So this is an amazingly camouflaged juvenile leafy sea dragon, and this is what that animal looks like as an adult. That's a male carrying eggs. And mind you, these images were shot with film, which most of us in this room probably remember, with the exception of Emily. Back in the day when you had 36 shots and didn't know until you got home if you actually got the shot you were trying for. But that wasn't enough. He wanted to find another special animal. So then we went on what I call my camping trip, my parking lot trip. So there's these old gypsum docks off of South Australia, like south of Adelaide, where the big ships used to pull in. And men fish on them. You can see those green kind of tents there, super windy. So when these old guys, when their lawn chairs go overboard or their pair of pants, animals like this, you pick something up and, oh, there's a pajama squid. Or this pair of jeans was loaded with blue ring octopus, which are only about that big. And you can't feel their bites, but their bite can actually kill you. But finally, we actually found what we went there for 3 trips, and that is a tasseled frogfish. See if you can locate where the eye is in that photograph. So when not only for decades did we own a dive shop, all of our trips were about diving. And kind of went in phases. So when we went through the shark phase, well, we had to go to Costa Rica for the famous Cocos Island, big animals, manta rays, and hammerheads. But I'm going to take you to a special place there. So Costa Rica is special in many ways, but it borders, or you can go to both coasts, the Atlantic coast and the Pacific coast. Off the Pacific coast is a really special place called Gulf of Dulce. And it's special in many ways because on land, you can see macaws, monkeys, toucans, even jaguars. But the water is what makes it even more amazing. So this is an area that is a sanctuary for hammerheads with a nursery, also whales, dolphins, orcas. But this coastal area is also where 5 out of 7 turtles of the world nest there. So these amazing ancient beasts haul themselves up on shore to lay their eggs. Of course, man has had a horrible impact on turtles, so that now only about 1 in 1,000 turtles will make it to sexual maturity. Emily is part of the organization I work with, and she gave 3 months of her life last year to go there and volunteer to work with the nesting sites and hope to help those odds improve. Then the digital era happened, and basically everybody could take pictures and nobody was willing to pay for photographs. So it was a wonderful day in my life when John said, you know, I don't really care about trying to make it as a professional photographer. I just enjoy photography. Great. And so we explored land things as well. In Costa Rica, the frogs are tiny bursts of color in the rainforest. Bright, bold, full of personality. They feel almost like the forest is smiling back at you. But these faces carry an important message. Frogs are often called the canaries in the coal mine of climate change. They breathe, drink through their skin, so that makes them especially sensitive to temperature, rainfall, pollution, and unfortunately, disease. When frogs begin to disappear, it's rarely just about the frogs. It's a quiet signal and something deeper. That something deeper is shifting. And when frogs fade, the rainforest starts to lose its rhythm. These forests don't just grow trees. They hold the soil, filter the water, and feed the rivers that flow from the mountain to the sea. And as those rivers change, the ocean feels it too. So we're beginning to see that, lots of things are connected. Our travels have not just been to warm, tropical places where life explodes with color. When John told me we're going to head to some cool islands in July, I didn't realize that cool was the operative word. So we went to a place called Svalbard. Many of you have probably heard of this, but this is an archipelago group of islands between Norway and Greenland, pretty darn far north. But we didn't go on a luxury ship. You can, there's beautiful luxury ships, but they don't go as far north as this crabbing boat did. So this is an icebreaker, and we went as far in the pack ice as you can go until the ship couldn't move any further. So think a little bit more expedition than vacation. But it's pretty amazing. Anytime you could peek outside, sometimes it was warm and sunny, you could have dinner on deck. Sometimes it was so crazy you could get thrown out of your bunk. But no matter when you were outside, the scenery constantly shifted with new ice patterns, fresh calving scars on glaciers, different light, different mood, different sea and sky the entire time. because here, the Arctic is warming 4 to 7 times faster than the global average. And you can see it. Retreating glaciers, thinning sea ice, and coastlines being reshaped year by year. Many of Svalbard's glaciers are pulling back tens of meters per year, exposing newly formed land where ice stood just seasons before. Polar bears spend less time on the ice. Arctic fox are following new food sources as the ecosystem adjusts to its changes. My favorite, the walruses, are far more at risk because they should be on the ice more, and they're pulling up these huge 1,000 to 1,500 pound bodies onto rocky shores, which puts their calves at risk of being crushed and causes more territorial disputes. And then we have the seabirds, absolutely thousands of them, but they are shifting nesting sites in order to adapt to this changing landscape. Everything is connected. The ice, the oceans, the currents, the plankton, the fish, birds, top predators, and every small change in this area ripples through the entire food web. It's super humbling. This vast, open, and soundless place, I can only remember how quiet it was. It's a place that makes you feel both incredibly small, but also deeply responsible for what's happening next. Now I want to take you to the 4th largest island in the world. You may have guessed, if we're talking about special places, that we have to include Madagascar. I've been to Madagascar 3 times. My husband's been there, I think, 9. Not just because we love it, but because that's what it takes if you want to experience the very diverse landscapes, animals, and get to the various national parks. Because it is, unfortunately, a very broken infrastructure. They have blown up train stations, roads, they've had civil wars, really problematic. This island parted from Africa nearly 90 million years ago, creating what we would call a natural laboratory for evolution. Life took its own extraordinary path. Lemurs, found nowhere else on Earth, hundreds of species, well, over 100 species, over 1,000 endemic orchids, many not described. Chameleons, countless reptiles, amphibians have all evolved here and nowhere else on Earth. Madagascar is perhaps the most fragile place on Earth, where poverty and corruption have left very deep marks. Forests are fractured by mining and logging, rivers are running red with clay, and habitats are shrinking in ways that threaten not just the animals, but the delicate balance that keeps this diverse place also resilient. That's the rarest lemur, called an eye-eye. Took many trips to find that. Does anyone have an idea what this animal is called? It's actually called a fossa, and it looks and acts like a big cat. The tail is about 4 feet long, but it's actually in the mongoose family, but super, super rare to find. And John found its mating tree with the help of our local guides. But in Madagascar, if you add crumbling roads, bridges that are no more, and journeys that take 100 kilometers can take you several days to travel. There's destroyed rail systems, as I said, and the growing toll of also cyclones and climate stress. you begin to feel that this breathtaking place is at a critical crossroads. What happens next truly matters. That's the world's smallest chameleon, photographed on my pinky. When we'd go to Madagascar, we had a guide who was also our fixer, our translator, organized our guides. His name's Frankie. We're still in touch with Frankie, and we've supported his family in many ways. We spent hours and hours in his old Peugeot on these bad roads, but these big, huge trucks would go past us. Oftentimes double 18-wheelers loaded to the brim, and I'd ask Frankie, well, what is this? What are they doing? They're delivering charcoal to the villages because that's how we cook. And then it starts to come together of why we have these super fractured forests. And that also was a big, big eye-opener for me, and realizing that you can't teach conservation to people who can't feed their children. There are so many places on the planet to cherish and protect. I chose just a few to highlight this afternoon. Years later, many of these places are now what they call hope spots. Back then, we just thought they were magical. Dr. Sylvia Earle is the founder of the foundation called Mission Blue. She took on the entire planet, and she's really making a difference. So I'm very happy to play this 2-minute trailer for you, but I hope it encourages you to watch her entire movie.
I see things that others do not.
A different world. A world that's changed enormously just in my lifetime.
My backyard was the Gulf of Mexico. That's where I first fell in love with the ocean. I think if others had the opportunity to witness what I have seen in my lifetime from thousands of hours underwater, I would not seem like a radical at all.
It's a pleasure to introduce a scientist, an engineer, a teacher, and an explorer.
The ocean is dying. All of us, we are the beneficiaries of having burned through fossil fuels. But at what cost? 60 years ago, when I began exploring the ocean, no one imagined that we could do anything to harm it. I saw the after influence of what we can do to the natural world.
Think of the world without an ocean. You've got a planet a lot like Mars.
No ocean, no life. No ocean, no us.
In 1990, she became the chief scientist for NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
I went to one meeting, and I was never allowed to go again.
I feel that I must resign and, as a private citizen, do what I can do with more freedom.
She's not afraid to say, you know what you're doing and it's wrong.
I really speak for the ocean. If we continue business as usual, we're in real trouble.
She's made it her life's purpose to make sure everybody else understands what's going on.
Sylvia has a wish for the planet, what she calls her Mission Blue. Protect the ocean in the same way we now protect the land.
I wish for a global network of marine protected areas to save and restore the ocean.
Hope spots aren't just places on a map. They're reminders of how we all fell in love with the ocean. And every one of them, every one of us, we don't have to be a scientist. We can all do something to make a difference. So part of this talk required that I had to tell you what it means to be a Hope Spot champion. So Emily, who's in the audience, had the idea a few years ago when we were getting our foundation off the ground and being full-time, that we should nominate Saba and the Saba Bank as a Hope Spot stop. 2 days from now, I do a different talk about that and why it's important. I'm going to tell you a little bit about where we're from. It's this little island on Saba. It's part of the Dutch Caribbean, so on this cruise, we will actually go past it. But I don't know if the captain is going to take us past it at daytime or nighttime or how far east or west of it. But it's just this little place. But it's kind of special. Saba is just 5 square miles, and this is what it looks like when you're approaching it on a smaller boat. A little place, but it's has 9 square kilometers, 5 different climate zones. So from rocky desert tide pools up to rainforest and eventually up to our rich, very unique cloud forest. What really makes it special though is that it's been protected since the 80s. And part of that is because we're a Dutch island and the Dutch are wonderfully philanthropic. So 28% of the land is protected, but the entire perimeter of the island, the Saba Marine Park, is protected down to almost 200 feet. And it's not, this park, when it was created, has been used as a model marine park to develop other parks around the world. The Saba Conservation Foundation keeps this park maintained above and below, and we also have researchers here on a regular basis. So there's a lot of positive. It's not meant to be all doom and gloom in this talk. So that brings us to what can we all do? Well, when John and I got our dive center, what I would call a well-oiled machine, I felt like there's more things we can do. And I always had questions. You know, we lived on this island with no beaches, yet we have tons of turtles. So I thought that if I have all these questions, maybe other people have the same kind of questions. So I came up with this idea of what became the cornerstone of our foundation. And that is, our foundation is called See and Learn. So as I like to say, I didn't become a scientist, I became a translator. The See and Learn Foundation, every October, we run a month-long event where we bring in scientists from around the world. And we do what you would now call TED Talks at a different bar or restaurant at night. But we also invite our community and our tourists to be citizen scientists underwater, in the rainforest, and taking children out of the classroom. We took this same magic formula and use it for Create and Learn, where we invite in artists to do workshops with our community, with tourists, with our youth, because if you know anything about art, you know that it is good for the mind. We not only work with traditional art forms, it's just a way of bringing new things to life. Our happy project is called Adopt a Box. And our electric company and telephone company put everything underground, which is great for storms, but in its wake, it made these ugly meter walls. Emily and I found funding to pay carpenters and our high school vocational students to cover the meter walls, which protects that important equipment, but also gave us a canvas to create storyboards. So we turned an eyesore into a walking cultural heritage tour. Every unveiling is a special event that the community is wonderfully embracing. So it's just a nice, positive, small island story. We also have a project called Hope Spots, which we did in the honor of Sylvia Earle. We have 9 locations on the island that are sensitive to climate change. So these posts are that any tourist or local can put their smartphone in, take a picture, and that contributes to a timeline. Turning Tides is another project that's not just about picking up trash. Quarterly, we have volunteers go to 2 specific beaches where we not just pick up, but we catalog every single piece of trash, and this goes into a worldwide database that is making a difference in marine litter policy. We wouldn't be a good foundation if we weren't working with youth. So we not only teach our teenagers to dive, we teach them in such a way that we are also teaching them life skills. So accountability, commitment that are going to give them the ability to also expand their horizons. We also do a project called Science Seekers, and this ensures that every kid on the island going through grade 6 has a year of nature education, starting with things like waste management, reforestation, how agriculture can be impacted by invasive species, and coral restoration. So these future decision makers, stakeholders, have what it takes to hopefully make the right decisions going forward. So what about all of us? When you watch the news, see a presentation like this, unfortunately, we can all feel a little overwhelmed of, like, does it make a difference? Are they really doing anything with my separated trash? It can be overwhelming, to say the least, frustrating. But I hope we can also see the positive. I am hoping, because I'm all about hope, I'm hoping that these images that I shared with you this afternoon, which began as my husband's way of seeing the world, but over time became the way that I learned to live my life, that they shape the choices that we make. Like, for me, they shaped it because we owned a lot of camera housings before we ever owned a house. The places we went, the pauses that we took. And the understanding that beauty is not something we own, it's something we are temporarily entrusted with. So tonight, or this afternoon, if these photographs have moved you in any way, these landscapes, that cat, that bear, that fish, this big beautiful animal, or those impossibly beautiful frogs, if now they feel just a little more personal, then maybe they're asking something of you also. For some of us, that looks like small, everyday decisions, using less plastic, maybe drying your clothes on the line like we used to, choosing public transport where you can, being just a bit more mindful about what we consume and about what we discard. And for others, especially those of you maybe still in the beautiful chaos of family, career, responsibility, maybe the most meaningful choice comes when you finally take a break, like this. When you travel, travel with intent. If you don't have the time, or maybe time has passed you where you just don't have the energy or ability to do what Emily did, support companies and organizations that give back, that invest in communities, that protect the places and species that make this all possible for our journeys. Organizations like the MSC Foundation, which is part of this cruise line, and the work that they do with Mission Blue. But perhaps the simplest, most powerful thing we can do costs absolutely nothing at all. When you go to a foreign place, take a moment to speak. Speak to your guide, speak to your driver, maybe the person cleaning your room, the chef that made your meal, and tell them that you care. Tell them that this place you traveled halfway across the world to actually matters. Tell them that a living reef, a thriving forest, that big animal is worth infinitely more than a short-term decision that can never be undone. Because your voice doesn't end with you, it echoes. And through those echoes, it reaches the people who make decisions. And you can remind them that these places are loved, they're seen, and that they deserve a future. So if you leave here today or this week and carry some of these thoughts and images with you, and hopefully your grandchildren can observe these wild creatures, not just in photographs, but also in person. If you'd like to know more about what we do, you can scan that QR code. We have a website, we're on social media every day. But by all means, support Mission Blue, whether that means just watching that movie and telling someone else to watch that movie, because you can contribute to a healthier ocean, and they're doing a lot of things to make that happen. And that's all I got. So thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions. And thank you for coming, because I didn't want